Welcome to Maximum Resilience with me, Kelly Bazzani, as we go on this epic journey of how to own your power and the steps to take that lead you towards an incredible life of maximum resilience. This educational, powerful, engaging, and inspiring show will levitate your mind, strengthen your emotional resilience, and revolutionize the approach that ensures mental health as we consciously address a worldwide epidemic. Wisdom is key. Let's shift the paradigm, embodying mental and emotional wellness. We do recover. Experience the transformation from victim to victor, giving rise to living your best life. Here's the secret: to learn how to master unleashing your full potential every day in every way. Maximum Resilience starts now. Hey everybody, welcome to Maximum Resilience with me, Kelly Bazzani. Happy April to everybody. First of all, good news. The book has finally been released, The Change: Insights into Empowerment. I'm so excited that we finally have the copy of it. I co-authored this with the amazing Les Brown, so I will be putting this on my website. And if you're interested in a copy, you can contact me for that, details later. But the more exciting news for today is I have my beautiful, talented friend, Heather Humphrey, with me today. A little backstory on this. As all of you know, my main value is integrity. And so when people would come to me for health coaching, I would refer them out because I was not applying health into my own life. So back last July, my best friend from college, Megan Enbring, contacted me and was like, hey, you want to come to a conference on health? And I was like, okay, cool. I'll just get some tips for resilience. And I was so empowered by this health community that I became a coach and a client in the same day. And so leading up to that, I attended all of these webinars. And this Heather Humphrey was giving a lot of these webinars. And I was like, I need to meet this woman. She is my spirit animal. And so we went to a conference in Cancun, and Megan Enbring's like, I got a seat next to Heather Humphrey down on the beach. I was like, I'll be there in 5 seconds. Took me 20 minutes to go up and talk to her. And when I did, she was just as beautiful in person as she was on the webinar. So when I wanted to do this Power of Health Matters, I contacted her because I needed her to come and share her expertise on this powerful topic of health. Now that we are in spring, we're setting goals. And I am so privileged and honored to have her with me here for April to kick off our Power of Health Matters. So without further ado, here is our Heather Humphrey, and I want her to share her story of how she got into health coaching, introduce herself, and what inspires her to coach. So Heather, welcome to Maximum Resilience. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, girlfriend. Oh my gosh, I am beyond excited to be here. I've never done something like this. So these first experiences, and I get to do it with my spirit animal, which is totally rad, right? To just be here and share all things that I'm super passionate about. And so thank you, Kelly. I mean, honestly, and it's funny to hear your story about Cancun and the beach and like how these like feelings kind of bubble up when we're going to like meet someone that we haven't met, right? Like I do the same thing. And it was just the coolest moment meeting you on the beach. And then when there's that instant chemistry of like, where have you been my whole life? So yeah, and here we are. So I'm excited. So thank you so much. Okay, so let me just share a little bit about me to kind of give you guys an idea. I actually started my health journey almost 6 years ago. You know, it's crazy because I'm 47 now, and to think about early 40s, I was just in this season of really struggling in my health. So and what kind of blew my mind is I also ate really well, right? Like I thought like, okay, you know, I'm eating whole foods, I'm exercising 5 days a week, but I still struggled. I struggled with so many things. I look at the surface of it and it was things like weight and inflammation, low energy, horrible sleep. Top it off, I had high blood pressure. I was really confused because I'm like, how doesn't make sense? Whole foods, exercise, why do I have all these struggles? But I quickly realized that even when you eat like proper nutrition, there's still a science to it, right? There's still a proper way to feed and fuel our body. But I also started to realize that this had a lot to do with it as well. So over a 3-month period, I had dropped my blood pressure. I got off sleep meds. I stopped drinking energy drinks. I really began to just feel so much better that it's like, I also learned in kind of that mindset work that even though you can get your body healthy, there are some other things internally that we need to dive into, that we need to work on to continue to move forward. Right. And I started to see the value in what it would be like to help other people in their health, right? Because I started to notice, like, my gosh, I feel amazing. If I could help just like one person feel as great as I do, because I can't be the only person struggling, right? If I could just help one person, not only would it just like help that individual, but I'm like, maybe this will help me too, right? Like maybe this is the missing link, because I've lost 30 pounds before. I've lost it a couple times in my life. Like, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? So, it's crazy because that one person over the last 6 years has turned into hundreds, Kelly, like helping hundreds of people in their health and in their well-being, and not just lose weight, but to really see people change the trajectory of their health, that becomes this beautiful ripple effect in their families, in their communities, and all these other areas. It's like, it's the purpose and the passion that I didn't know that I needed, if that makes sense. Like, coaching brings so much value and inspiration, not so much for me. I mean, of course, it's helped me move forward and continue to like create optimal and working on ultra health in life, but to see other people win and just have success and build bigger, fuller lives. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, so now if you don't know why she's my spirit animal, now you do. And yes, I absolutely know what you mean. Every single bit of it makes sense. And I can relate so much to your story, Heather, because same, right? I went to the doctor last year prior to joining this health community, and I'm 42. And she's like, you're pre-diabetic. And I'm like, how? Right? Like, I don't eat sugar. She's like, well, you're 40. I'm like, I don't accept that answer, and I started working out. I started doing these things, but still, fatigued, not confident in my body, all these things. And so joining this health community, it's like, nope, now I'm at the optimal weight, but no, I gain the confidence, I can coach at a level. I do health coaching now in my resilience, all of the things that you said I can mirror. And so we are going to take everybody on a journey of how we got there, the steps that we took. We are now going to spread the ripple effect on this podcast, right? Are you ready to do it with me?
Let's do it, girlfriend.
Why we're here. So our segment 1 is, you guys have all heard, or maybe you haven't, about intrinsic motivation. Big word, right? So we are going to talk about the factors that we are needed to make an impact on your life. You heard Heather say, right? We've heard of yo-yo dieting. You start something, it's short term, you gain the weight, you lose it, you gain the weight, you lose it. So what is needed to have like that longevity? So Heather, so many people are struggling with motivation. I hear it all the time. I'm not motivated, especially through this pandemic. It's been really hard on people. They're tired, they're exhausted. So I tell people, is it really a motivation problem? We learn in our health community, no, right? It's a clarity problem. So once we're clear on what it is we want, then we're clear to make a decision and leave no room for it to be any other way. I just spoke about this on my last podcast with the infamous Jim Britt. So talk to us a little bit about when you're coaching people, what do you hear about that? And when you hear people, like, you work on them, right? I'm like, what is it that they desire? Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about that when you're coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true, right? Like, I hear it all the time too in conversations, like, kind of trying to dig in with someone, like, I just lack the motivation to actually get started and to even make that decision to go all in. And here's the thing, if you are unsure of what you want and why you want it, then you're always going to have a motivation problem. Right. And I think we're conditioned to think that it always comes down to motivation. So that journey of clarity, man, it can be challenging, right? I'm sure you have come up against walls. I think it's challenging for most of us. mostly because we don't ask ourselves questions, right? We're not really getting deep, or someone else isn't asking us the questions, in which I love to do this with clients. Like, if you knew you wouldn't fail, what do you want to see happen in your health? Or what do you want to see happen in your life, right? We too often, we're kind of like jumping to these thoughts of failing that keeps us from even envisioning and dreaming, and kind of like, it's like puts up the blocker of even like going to clarity, right? It's the number one question that I get from people too, is like, well, where do I even begin? Right? You know, we began by taking a moment to do that self-reflection, right? Because what do you want and why do you want it? I feel like those two go together so perfectly, right? Because it brings that clarity piece. And I always kind of look at it, it's like going on a road trip, right? You have to figure out what's important to you on that road trip, right? What are the things that you want to see? What are the things that you want to experience along the way? And instead of already placing judgment on ourselves when we haven't even done anything to take action yet, right? Like, if we don't dive into this in the beginning, it's almost like it just cripples us, right? So I always feel like bringing clarity into the forefront really helps muzzle the negative internal chatter that goes on all too often. It doesn't get rid of it. And we'll kind of talk about that. But that's where I always love to start with people, is really kind of just digging in deep with the why and the what to bring that clarity.
I absolutely agree with you. And what I find, and that's so brilliantly said, and I love the metaphors that you use, because we've already talked ourselves out of the change. And so when we have that intrinsically motivated goal, it's easier to maintain, and it eventually becomes that habit, and it's your highest stimulus for change, right? Your why, like you said, is your highest stimulus for change, because suddenly you can create. If you're externally motivated, to your point, if you're changing for a significant other, someone is telling you to change, pressure from the external noise, it's going to be a short-term change. We see this all the time. You know, my partner told me I need to lose weight. Well, my doctor told me I have high blood pressure. Well, this and that. It's a short-term goal. But like you said, if you're asking yourself the questions and you get really deep on that why, like when I coach, we go like 7 layers deep on that why. Well, why? Well, because I want to feel better. Why do you want to feel better? Well, because I'm feeling fatigued. Well, why are you feeling fatigued? Well, because of that. Well, why? If we go really deep on that, then that is your highest stimulus for change. Then you can make that decision. Then it's for you. Then that's your intrinsic motivation. Would you agree, Heather? Do you see that when you coach?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a lot of what kind of comes into that, Kelly, is starting with like the self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's much easier said than done. So if we were to ask, kind of like going back to those questions, in a perfect world, what do you want? Right. And before we really start to answer that, it's just kind of like remembering the word perfect, right? So removing any doubt or confusion and questions of possibility, right? Go beyond the surface and the expectations. And just because like I ask questions, you know, for clients to really declare what they want, doesn't mean they have to act on it right then. And I think that whole thing of like, oh, I'm not going to declare it because I'm going to have to act on it. And that's what's so great, right? It doesn't mean that you have to make it happen right then. It just allows you to acknowledge what our true desires are. And I always tell my clients, I'm like, you know, this process, like you said, we go 7 layers deep, but then we let those answers bubble up, right? Yes. We let them just kind of come up. And it's important to know what we want and to make sure that they're not false desires too. I think that this is important to talk about, because I think false wants and like immediate fixes, right? Yes. Versus genuine wants and desires that come from a much deeper place. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. And you took the words right out of my mouth. Like if we're driven by those emotions and feelings or those false wants, then it's going to be a quick fix, right? Then we're looking to find help from someone else rather than looking for ourselves. Like, Heather, I really want to do this, or I really want, you know, you're looking for someone to just, you know, validate that. And it's like, well, time out, right? Like, let's explore it. Let's talk about it. Doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't have to get us stuck. But if we're driven by those emotions and feelings, it's going to be that quick fix again. Let's explore it. Let's see how we feel about it. Let's, you know, it might work, it might not, but let's go deeper within. And that kind of leads us to our next thing, Heather. Like, that structural tension, and how does it lead us to feel empowered and longevity? And I love this subject matter because this is a big part of our health program, because that's kind of the relationship between the vision that we have and our current reality. Let's take a look at like, what is the current reality that we're actually in when we're setting our why? Because like you said, if we have a false interpretation of how things like really are in our current reality, and I find this in the coaching, and I even found this with myself. I'll own it. Sometimes I have a hard time looking at my current reality, you know, and I've got to sit with that for a minute. So this is where I kind of like praise you when we're looking at working with people in their current realities or structural tension, because I've heard you speak many times on this. So share with us a little bit how you feel about structural tension when you're working with people, or what you see when you're working with clients.
Yeah. I love that you said that even you struggle getting that kind of clarity on that current reality. And I think a lot of people do. And it is kind of that way of like denial. Like, I think it's like, okay, it's actually easier to know what I want versus then to totally define where I'm at. Right. But I love the structural tension piece because I feel like it's the roadmap to success in a way, right? It's the magnetic pull to what it is that you want to create in your life. And so when we can get really clear and really take like, so it's self-awareness, it's, you know, tapping into that what do I want? Why do I want it? Right? Like, what kind of quality does it bring your life? Like, what is the energy like? Can you feel that energy? Like, is it excitement? Is it butterflies? Is it nerves? Is it all of it? Right? But helping people really kind of envision too, because sometimes it's like, it's okay to do some of that while you're figuring out your current reality, right? Because you're like, if I know all the things that I want to feel when I'm there, and that excitement, and to be able to play with my kids, be able to get off my medications, be able to not have to yo-yo diet anymore and just live a really happy, healthy life, I can actually start to share what all that's going to feel like. And now I'm like, holy cow, this is where I'm at right now. Like, this is my starting point. And now we get to figure out what are the steps to get us right to our desired outcome.
How exciting is that? You know, and I think the fear of looking at the current reality sometimes keeps people blocked. I know it does for me. You know, when I have to sometimes look at my current reality, it's like, ooh, the changes that I need to make. But I know you and I talk about, like, we can't lift 1,000 pounds in one day, but we can lift 1 pound 1,000 times. So those small repeated efforts will get there. You know, when we look at this structural tension, you know, in our program, it's defined as it's a very powerful force in helping us create better health and well-being. And so we need to increase that tension to help ourselves stay motivated, focused, and working hard. So the example, you know, I give is like, you become overweight, you have high blood pressure, you have poor fitting clothes, you have a pre-diabetes diagnosis. There's a really naturally high level of structural tension there, right? There's your current reality. So then we're working to restore that equilibrium, like you gave that beautiful example of, well, I want to be able to play with my children. I want to be able to have a really healthy relationship. I want to be able to live. I want to be able to do that. We want to restore that equilibrium. So then we start having a vision. Well, what would it look like if I was able to like play with my children and this and that? You start to get a desire, you start to get excited. You know, I just want to give our audience an example of that, right? And so you and I, like in our coaching experience, one of the most satisfying parts is helping people create that vision. Like you said beautifully, what would it look like if you didn't fail? You know, because those thoughts are going to come up, right? But I think our goal as a coach is like how to help people, like, to not allow it into their conscious memory, right? When it does, challenge that and go, how true is that really that you would fail? Because from what I can see today, you know, you sent me a text saying you woke up with some energy. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So how about tomorrow we do A, B, and C, right? It's just like little tiny repeated effort. So it starts with that, like you said at the beginning in your beautiful intro, like it starts right here with that structural thinking. So creating based on those values and what's important to them in their vision. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, because we've talked about this a little bit, right? Intrinsic motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic. And I think a lot of times people kind of start with some, and I can't even say extrinsic reasons, right? Why they want to do something, which I never like shatter that with someone, but it's really helping them kind of dig deep and figure out, like tap in a little bit, right? Because those intrinsic motivations, they're going to go hundreds of miles farther, right? Than just wanting to say like, hey, I just want to lose 30 pounds, right? Well, that envisioning, what does that look like in your life? Like, what are you free to do? What are you free to think when you've lost 30 pounds off your body and off your mental weight, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I think it can be easy to make a list of things we want, right? I mean, I think that is easy, but when we break down and get detailed with the why, that's where the clarity comes. Because other than that, we will still always lack motivation if we are not clear on these things that we're talking about right now.
I agree. And even, you know, I just want to go, like when I was in recovery, right? And they told us to pick a higher power. And I remember I was so angry at my higher power because, you know, I was so sick of my addiction. And they're like, I don't care, pick a doorknob. Pick a doorknob to be your higher power. I don't care how you start, just start, right? And it's kind of like that in this health program. It's like, if you need to pick an external motivator to get started, do that, right? And then as you start to build your vision, like you said, then you get more intrinsically motivated on your own why, however that works, as you're working with a coach and you're seeing how they do it and you're seeing how you get intrinsically motivated. Great. I think what kills people is the comparative thinking, you know, like, oh, well, you know, this woman lost 10 of this woman that, you know, it's like, well, bring it back intrinsically. Like, what's your journey? What's your value? What's your why? And I think the longer you start working on it, which we're going to get to in a later segment, is you bring it back to when you're working on nutrition and fueling, it's more than just food or weight loss or whatever it is. Some results take longer than others. But when you're working with us and you're basing it on your values and not comparing your results to other people, that's, I think, we're more the intrinsic. That's why it's so important to have that why, to have the longevity of change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it's the wins along the way, right? We've helped so many people in their health that we know it doesn't take weeks to see like, yes, I finally accomplished X. I mean, it's just a matter of days, because when we need wins to know that we are capable of continuing on to doing more and to digging deeper. And I think that that's where we see that shift with people, is it's in the little wins of like, this is so much bigger than I actually realized. That what I'm actually doing here is so much bigger for myself. So yeah,
I agree. And it's so exciting to see. It's so exciting when we get those texts, you know, it's like, you know, just the wins. I mean, it's just so exciting. And then that's encouraging to keep going. Like you said, it's just the ripple effect. You know, it's so much more. It's not about what they're losing in terms of weight or whatever. It's everything that they're gaining. It's everything that they're gaining along the way. So yeah, it's just so exciting. And, you know, as we're talking about this, like you said about want, there's a difference between saying, I want something to happen and actually making it happen. And I know this sounds simple, but we hear it all the time. And so when we're defining that goal and creating that structural tension and defining that current reality, Heather, then we resolve that tension by creating that action plan for them. And I think that's the rewards that we get from it. And that leads to that empowerment and that longevity and taking the lead and ownership in their health. So instead of them feeling then powerless over what they're doing, they step into their power, like you say, by seeing those little wins. So we go from the language of, I want to be healthy. This is one of the other things I heard you speak about that it's like gone like intrinsically into me, is instead of going to, I want to be healthy, we go to, I am healthy. And we take the next action step to make that happen. And I want to be really clear when I say this, is like, it doesn't have to be a huge action step like we talk about, right? And even if it hasn't happened yet. So I want to be healthy. We go to, I am healthy. What's the next action step? Oh, even if we wake up and we touch the treadmill, even if we're not ready to get on it, we touch that treadmill, we move that needle a little bit. Okay, I'm healthy, right? I'm going in, I'm touching that treadmill. And then maybe the next day I go in and I set the time on that treadmill for how much time I want to be on there. So we're taking that next action step to create that new identity for ourselves. And I
Yeah.
know you do that.
Yeah. I actually love that you said that, because I think in our minds, we think we're kind of setting these unrealistic expectations, right? And what you're talking about is you showed up, right? Yeah. Maybe you didn't get an hour workout in, or you started and you just didn't have the energy, or you went and you walked on the treadmill for 5 minutes. The fact is you showed up, which is so much more than what you were doing before. And really being able to flip or kind of just make that mental shift of looking at, these are the wins. Yes. Right? This is the black and white of what it was before to what you're doing different now. It's just these tiny micro habits.
Yes.
Of small changes that stack up over time and create the longevity piece.
Absolutely. I love it so much. And so, Heather, before we go to break, because we're going to come back with so much more, would you please share with them your information so they know how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me on Instagram at Holy Healthy Heather, or you can always email me as well at htownhumph, HTOWNHUMPH @gmail. And you can also find me on Facebook under Heather L. Humphrey.
Beautiful. And I would really suggest reaching out to Heather if you want longevity and long-term health and wellness. She is absolutely amazing. And you can reach me at www.myresiliencecoach.com, and I'll be launching a new website here shortly. And we will be back in talking about the mind-body connection and how to become the dominant force in your life. So come back, because Heather and I are going to be bringing it. Thank you so much. We will see you shortly. Welcome back to Maximum Resilience with me, Kelly Bazzani, and my amazing co-host, Heather Humphrey. So we are talking about the power of health matters and how to be the dominant force in your life. And so to lead us into the next segment, I wanted to do a quote from our health journey book, our life book. And it says, "It is essential to remember that the most important element in actually creating the sustainable transformation of your weight, health, and well-being is the development of your own ability to take ownership of your choices." So I'm going to start with having Heather share with us her story of empowerment, of what she is doing every day in your own health. You know, I am a big guru of we don't have anybody on our show that is not actually practicing what we are talking about. So I have been watching Heather for 90 days do her journey and beyond. And now she is doing, is it 75 hard, Heather, or?
Yeah.
75 hard. So I'm going to have her share, because I watch her do her lives every day. And then she's going to lead us into a little bit of awakening her, and then we will dive right in. So Heather, share with us what you've been doing in your own health that kind of talks about our last two segments of intrinsic motivation and that structural tension, because I know you have been demonstrating that in your own health journey.
Working on it, right?
Yes.
And like I said earlier, you know, because when we think of the journey, we're always on it, right? I don't think we actually ever arrive. I think we arrive at goals. But the idea is that progression forward continually, right? So like I mentioned earlier, you know, my journey started over 6 years ago. And because their journey is never linear, right? I've definitely had my shares of ups and downs over the years. But the downs, you guys, what's been really cool about this, they're not as low. Kelly, I'm sure you've had some experiences in your life, even being in, you know, in the coaching that you are, and then even on the health side, we're not perfect. We have our lows, but they're not anywhere near what they used to be, because now we have the tools to continually work on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So what I kind of wanted to share with you, just talking about that whole 90-day, is at the beginning of 2022, I kind of was in a season where I just got super laxed. I was laxed with my exercise routine. I was laxed with my nutrition. And I was just in a space where I really just needed to kind of reset and get my head back on straight, right? Like, okay, what does this look like? And what is it going to take? Because sometimes we can be stuck in that, and we're kind of like grasping for like, okay, maybe this will make me happy. Maybe this will get me back on track. This was last July. I just made a commitment to myself that I would start exercising 3 days a week. Okay. And just focusing on fueling my body well. I'm like, I can handle focusing on those two things. And shortly after that, to what you just said, we started a 90-day show up challenge. So I was like, well, this is perfect, right? Not only have I committed to myself, but now I'm going to live out loud on social media and I'm going to just share how I'm showing up. And I got out of my head that I had to have makeup on to do a live, or that I had to look cute or use some sort of silly filter. I'm like, I just need to show up. If I worry about all that stuff, I'm not going to show up. And this has nothing to do with anybody else, but what the desire that I have. And I wanted to level up, right? So what did I do? I just like posted myself working out. Like you saw this stuff, right? I would share tips on maybe like hydrating. Maybe I'd share a little bit on nutrition. And I just kind of let that be my accountability billboard, right? I use social media for that. And what is also happening is I'm building integrity with myself through that process, which has really honestly allowed me to just kind of overcome some limiting beliefs that I've had that have actually been holding me back. It doesn't matter how long I've been coaching. It doesn't matter how long I've been working on my health. We still come up against these walls. And I think when I look back, I just was burned out, right? I didn't have the right focus. I didn't have the right clarity. We talked about that. And I just needed to get started. So 30 weeks later, I'm still at it, which is awesome. And it's cool because through that progression, I've progressed to like 5 or 6 days a week of exercise without it being this monumental effort. It's out of desire now, not out of like, you have to do this, right? If you want to level up and you're just grinding and you don't want to do it. So, and I'm not doing it to lose weight, right? I was just doing it to kind of build this like mental toughness, if that makes sense. And really alongside that, it just enhances your health anyways. So 2 weeks ago, I decided, all right, I'm ready to level up. I'm really ready to level up the mental game. And so I started 75 hard. So for those of you who don't know, one part of that is that you have to exercise 7 days a week, twice a day. So, it's interesting because being able to level up mentally, Kelly, has really set some non-negotiables for myself. And it's really helping me push through some hard things that have come up. And they come up for all of us, right? And sometimes they're coming up daily, but it doesn't matter like what they are. It's the idea of the non-negotiable that I'm in. Like I may suck today and those 2 workouts may not be super great, but I got them done. It's the idea of I have this desire. I'm clear that I'm ready to level up mentally because I also recognize that by me working on myself, it's going to bring so much value to the people that I'm coaching and that I'm helping in their health, right? Like it's kind of cool to be in a space and in a season that we step outside of ourselves. We're doing things for ourselves, but we step outside of ourselves and recognize that the work that I'm doing will be able to be spread amongst other people. Not that I'm going to get my clients to do 75 hard. That's not what I'm talking about. But I get to lead by example of the work that I'm doing on myself to provide hope and show people that it just takes clarity, commitment, desire, and go, right? Like, doesn't matter. It's not linear. You just go. So I was going to just mention really quick, on the mental toughness of what I've kind of experienced is last week, when I had started the 75 hard, I was like, gosh, I don't really know that this is the right season. I have 4 trips coming up and how do you do it while you're traveling? Right. So I just dove into it. We got going. And then I got 2 hours of sleep one night. My husband woke me up, needed to go to the ER. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. So that day, not only did we have some health issues going on, he's totally fine, but I had a very busy day, like probably one of the fullest days on my calendar ever. And doing this gave me the mental toughness to put any self-doubt. I can't do this. I should reschedule this stuff. There's no way I can show up and be good and 100% Heather at my event tonight that I'm putting on in my community, in my health community. But you know what, Kelly? I didn't even think about that stuff. I'm like, these are non-negotiables, girl. You show up, you do the work, and none of that matters. And it didn't. It was really, I don't know. It was a huge win of just seeing like we are capable of doing hard things when we just make that commitment to ourselves.
And it doesn't need to be perfect. And I'm sitting here like this, like I love everything you had to say, right? I mean, it's resilience too. It's emotional resilience. It's bouncing back. But like you said, Heather, it's you making an agreement with yourself, you making a commitment with yourself. And when you do that, and I've talked about this when I do trainings, it's my arrow that I do. When you make an agreement with yourself and you make a commitment to yourself, all these things increase. Self-love, self-respect, self-trust, all these things. When you break that agreement or commitment with yourself, all those things decrease. Self-worth, self-trust, self-this. You need to first do these things with yourself. That's what we say intrinsic motivation. When you allow yourself to build this within yourself, then, like you said, it bleeds out to other people. Then you become more effective and efficient coach, partner, friend, all these different things. But if you cannot first build that relationship within yourself of commitment and trust and whatever, then it can't bleed out. And I love what you said. It started small. There's never going to be a right season. There's a holiday every month. You know, people are like, well, I'll start next month after Easter. Well, I'll start next month after Halloween. Well, I'll start next month after Thanksgiving, after Christmas, or when things slow down for me. You have to love yourself enough to be like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to try it out. It doesn't have to look perfect. My workout might not be in the best place. I've seen you sometimes be like, hey, it's 20 degrees. How cold was it that one day? Like 7 degrees or something. You're like, I'm going to make it work. And I don't forget where you were, but I was like, oh my God, this girl, right? When you're willing to make that decision, you know, it's like you have this spiritual awakening almost. It's like, whoa, I can do hard things because I have that desire within myself. That's so good, Heather. It is, you know, you have that belief.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I think like along this process, and this, I feel like what we get to do, Kelly, and the things that we get to talk about, like we're talking about, you know, like health, right? Mind, body, spirit, because it all goes together. It's all intertwined.
Yes.
And as we level up in these areas in our life, it kind of just like raises everything, right?
Yes.
Not to be perfect, but just to be better. And I think one of the things that I was going to talk about is the fear, right? I think it's definitely worth tapping into this a little bit because it's important to understand fear, why it's there, how to move through that, how to overcome that. Because I think a lot of times, even with the knowing what you want and why you want it, we can still be paralyzed. We can still not even get as far as creating that structural tension because we are stuck. And if we're not vocalizing it to our coach and we're not having those deeper conversations, maybe what I'm going to share will help people just internalize a little bit and maybe be more open to talking about it. But, you know, I always say, like, it's important to let the fears come up. Right? We don't want to stuff them down. It's kind of like when we talk about processing emotions, right? Like this is becoming the dominant force in your life and in your health. So knowing what we want is scary. And to be honest, I think it's on purpose because if fear could talk, I honestly think it would say, this is your mission, your want, your desire. Should you choose to accept it and go after it?
I agree.
Right? Yep. I think like that's what fear is saying. And it's like, are you courageous enough to go after it? Because our brain, we learn about this, right? Dr. A talks about this. Our brain wants to protect us. It wants to protect us from the fears coming up. And it's kind of like we're in this, like you were talking about, like we're programmed for survival. We're not programmed for desire, right? Mm-hmm. So really being able to overcome that primitive brain and let your wants, hear me out, let your wants be uncomfortable. And even if they hurt a little bit, like, I think it's okay to sit in that. And we must remind ourselves every single day, like every time we're up against this stuff, right? Because when fears come up, I just encourage my clients, let's just dive in. Let's get in the muck, in the fears, and really expand what the fear is so that you know exactly what it is that you're facing and how that's going to help you get really clear on what you want to achieve so that you can overcome it. Because without that clarity, this goes back, this is like our word today, right? Is clarity. It falls in all these different categories. So it's kind of like when we find ourselves avoiding the fear, we remind ourselves that we're just we're doing it to avoid what we really want. Does that make sense?
It does.
Right.
And I use fear as a motivator.
Mm-hmm.
I do, because it comes up for me all the time, fear. And I will tell you that when it does, it's super uncomfortable. And like I say to people, it's like, you think you're comfortable, but it's going to lead to an uncomfortable life. Let's get uncomfortable for a minute so we can lead a more comfortable life. Because fear is actually an indicator. The ego, like you talked about, Heather, does not know the difference between real and perceived threat. So, if there's a bear standing in front of you, okay, that might be a real threat that puts you into that fight, flight, or freeze. But if you're going to go make an uncomfortable change that's out of your comfort zone, you're going to go into that fight, flight, or freeze the same, but it's really a perceived threat. So to your point, let's sit with that for a minute and explore that and use it as a motivator for change to get clear. And so, just to share a little personal, during, I got COVID right before we were supposed to go to that emotional resilience conference. And a big trigger for me is when I lose too much weight, because it reminds me of when I had anorexia nervosa years prior. And I was losing weight and I got into this fear, and I'm like, I'm not posting about this. And there's no way, that's all this fear. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, let me lean into that. What's that about for me? Let me get clear on what's that about for me. How true is it really that if I post about this, people are going to comment like, oh, how true is that really? Let me lean into that. Can I actually use that to help inspire people that are also struggling with their journey?
Yeah.
So, like, to your point, like, how does this lead to complete transformation in your life? Because I want to be sure to get this in here. We need to shift from this diet mentality, right? This yo-yoing back and forth. We're working on ourselves. All this stuff, to your point, Heather, is what's holding us back. We think it has to do with food, but in actuality, it has nothing to do with food. Like, we have been talking about all this stuff. It's nutrition. It's nourishing your mind, your soul, your body, your finances, your relationships. You've heard Heather speak about how it does this with all of these things. So when you're able to nourish these things, you're able to lose so much emotional weight. Like Heather's talking about, show us your mess. We want to take your mess and make it your message to yourself about how to gain clarity so you can gain mental confidence in all your abilities, which is your birthright. You guys, you've heard me talk about this on my podcast with Misty and Michael. We want you to visit those anger ponds or those fear ponds, dip your toe in it, but you are not to live there and set up LED lights. Like, let's go explore those, like Heather said, right? But then we want to take you over that bridge to abundance of confidence and love and light and, all that different stuff. So when you gain all this, when we coach you through this stuff, you're gaining so much knowledge. Like Heather has mentioned a couple times, awareness, consciousness. All of those thoughts that are holding you back from making these changes are all subconscious. 80%. We've talked about this too. It's just habit. You're picking up your subconscious beliefs, habit, habit, habit. We want to create new healthy habits, those micro habits, little bit at a time. Clarity, our word of the day. Vision, positive habits, consistent routines, like Heather was talking about, every day. She didn't just in one day of her 90 be like, oh, yep, I'm going to do this every day. Over 90 days, she developed these positive routines and consistent routines that led her to desire, you heard her say, and control over her life, not the illusion of control, that leads her to this longevity and overall health and wellness. And then she can take it and do the ripple effect with others. The physical weight's just an added bonus. That's just predictability, right? So the mindset and the finances, we tend to see results a little bit slower, right? Because, we got to work on those beliefs. But the weight loss is so predictable. So we acquire confidence there. We're like, ooh, lost a little bit of weight, ooh, and then we're like, great. So now let's work on matching your mind to where your body's set. Our mentor, Jared, talks about that all the time. I was like, yes, right? We talk about that all the time. And then it opens the door to all these possibilities. but if we don't have the awareness of our current reality and dive into those fears, like Heather's talking about, and a willingness, so then that creates the desire for positive change, to take the action, to see the results. And we
You know
see
what I
it.
love? Yeah. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
You know, when you were kind of talking about earlier, you're like, we've mentioned it a couple times, like nutrition and mindset and, you know, the mind, body, spirit, kind of like the holistic approach, right? Into this. And I always think of like the nutrition piece, that's your portal, right? That's your entry point on creating a much bigger, fuller life, healthier, right? Like we're going to start with that healthy body, because all that mess and stuff that we've been talking about, that we kind of pull up through these layers, like this is people's stories. That's what's so beautiful about it, right? Like people's mess and all that muck and all that stuff that one might think is super negative in their life, like that's part of your journey of who you are becoming, because you're learning through this process, you're learning all these tools. You're learning that emotional agility to really kind of, I didn't even actually know what that was, Kelly. Like I didn't even know the term emotional intelligence even existed. And that's when I also realized I have a lot of work to do on myself, a lot. And I feel like I'm only scratching the surface. But I think one of the biggest things about becoming the dominant force in our lives is really like, hey, we've done a lot of work here. We think about what we've talked about, right? Is actually now making the choice.
Yes.
Making the choice on whether or not you're ready to move forward. Are you ready to do the work? Because I believe in my heart, and I share this, like, I'm so open with my clients. I'm like, I will guide you. Like I'm there with you every step of the way, but nothing amazing comes easy. This, like anything else, is going to take work. And sometimes it's going to take a little harder work some days. But I think when you know that you're not alone, that you have the resources, you've got all this stuff, then you've got the tools to be set up for success, right? I think we've all wanted that in the past. But I always love the idea of like, when you come down, you're on that, now I'm on the make the choice path. Okay. And there's a light, like a street light, and there's 3 lights on there, like a normal street light. And these are your choices, right? Are you going to pursue what you really want? Are you going to delay it? Or are you going to deny it? Like I heard this was profound. I can't even remember where I heard this. Man. And I'm like, because at that point, that's where we take full responsibility of ourselves. We've done some of this unlayering work. And I think it's one of the most freeing moments when people get here, because we spend so much time working on the awakening, right? Just to get stumped right here and not actually make that choice, not make that decision to go all in for ourselves. But I think it's exciting and scary all at the same time for clients to kind of now, are you going to move or what are you going to do?
It is, because their whole life has been created by a certain identity. And what I like to tell people is that identity was created by beliefs that weren't even your choice. You didn't come out of the womb with the beliefs of I'm not good enough, or I'm going to fail, or I'm this. So now you have the opportunity to create an identity based on beliefs you're creating, action steps you're creating. Like you said, now you've gotten to this green light and it's like, whoop, right? Do I go? Do I pause? Do I stop? I love that analogy. That's brilliant, by the way. I'm going to steal that from you too, but I'll quote. I'll put Heather Humphrey quote. But that's absolutely right. And it is a scary choice. And we can guide them as coaches, but we can't make that decision for them. But it's really helpful when they see us doing the same work. And I tell people all the time, this is a lifelong journey of work. And I love that you gave that example, but the lovely part about that is it gets to be created with their vision and their desire. And I love to support them on their vision and their desire with their new beliefs of I am healthy, I am abundant, I am worthy, I am whatever their beliefs are and their structure. But I see resistance because sometimes they don't know who they are with a new weight loss goal or a new financial goal or this or that. And I'm like, who are you not to be? Who are you not to be? Brilliant and this and that. And so I love seeing this for the desire for positive change. And I just get emotional thinking about this because I look at my own journey throughout the year and I talk to myself so negatively about what my body couldn't do for me and what my mind couldn't do for me. And in this health program that we are a part of, I have learned so much about like reframing that narrative about what it can do for me and what my mind can do for me. And the community, the four-part program that I just want to touch on, right, is that you have just this feeling of your body, this feeling of your mind, this feeling of the community. And I get to meet brilliant, inspiring women like you. And so I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I'm going to be sharing this not only like on the networks that it's going on, but to everybody that I know so that they know what a humbling woman you are in sharing your experience, strength, and hope today. And before we end, is there any last words you want to leave our audience with?
Well, Kelly, I am so honored to be here. To have the opportunity to really share purpose and passion at this level is a gift that I never actually thought would come my way. So I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for our friendship and this opportunity. And I always feel like it's better to be willing to make a change regardless of the outcome, right? As opposed to not making that change at all. And we let so much, all that chatter, all that noise get in the way. And it's been beautiful to see you make wonderful like progress in your overall well-being. I don't even want to just say in health because it's so much more than that. And we get to do this together and just to see people's lives change. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much for today. You have filled my cup. My cup is overflowing.
Same, girl. Same here. And as you can see, we love our vulnerability and we encourage all of you to share yours. Show us your mess. We will help guide you to make it your message. And we care about your vision. And we love all of you. And so until next time, Heather Humphrey, one more time, Heather, share your information so they know how to get a hold of you.
Yes, absolutely. So Instagram, it is Holy Healthy Heather. Email is HTOWNHUMPH@gmail. And you can find me at Heather L. Humphrey on Facebook. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And again, I'm Kelly Bazzani, www.myresiliencecoach.com. And please reach out to Heather. You will not regret it. She is fabulous and amazing. And I'm so grateful she was here. And until next time, love and light. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Maximum Resilience with me, Kelly Bazzani, your ally for addiction. Tune in the first Monday of each month at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Engage in this epic journey of how to own your power and the steps to take that lead you towards an incredible life of maximum resilience. We do recover. Experience the transformation from addiction to living your best life. For more information about maximum resilience and me, Kelly Bazzani, visit myresiliencecoach.com. That's myresiliencecoach.com.